The moment I realized they were setting me up was 8:15 a.m. in conference room B, staring across a beige table at two people who'd already decided my fate. Patricia Collins from HR sat on the left, all fake concern and rehearsed sympathy. To her right, wearing a smug quarter zip and that sorority president smile, was Ashley Wellington, 27 years old, zero manufacturing experience, and the CEO's niece, who had just accused me of workplace harassment. "Tom," Patricia began, her voice dripping with practiced neutrality, "we've received concerns about communication patterns that may be contributing to a hostile work environment." That's when it hit me like a punch to the gut. This wasn't a discussion, this was an execution. I'm Tom Morrison, 46 years old. I'd been busting my ass at Hudson Manufacturing for 14 years. I started on the production floor, welding brake components, worked nights to get my engineering degree, and climbed every rung of the ladder through sweat and competence. I was the senior operations manager, the guy who turned this place from a family hobby into something that actually made money. But sitting in that sterile room, watching Ashley's performance, I realized none of that mattered anymore. This whole nightmare started 3 months earlier with an email that made my coffee taste like motor oil. The subject line read, "New leadership integration, welcome Ashley Wellington." I should have known right then that my 14 years of keeping this place from burning down were about to count for nothing. The email was corporate nonsense at its finest. Ashley brings fresh perspectives from the consulting sector and will be partnering with Tom Morrison to modernize our manufacturing processes. Partnering? Like I needed a 27-year-old with an MBA and zero real-world experience to teach me how to run operations I'd been perfecting since she was in high school. I pulled up her LinkedIn profile while my breakfast turned to concrete in my stomach. The usual consultant garbage, disruptive thinker, passionate about operational synergy, change catalyst. 2 years at some boutique firm in Columbus, probably charging companies $500 an hour to tell them what their own employees already knew. Her profile picture screamed trust fund, perfect teeth, perfect hair, perfect life handed to her on a silver platter. My reply was one word, noted. But inside, I was feeling that familiar knot in my chest, the same one I got during my Navy days when officers fresh out of the academy tried to tell seasoned petty officers how to run a ship. The first team meeting was a disaster. Ashley strolled in 20 minutes late, chomping on a $15 protein bar like it was performance art. No apology. She just flopped into the ergonomic chair I'd personally requisitioned after one of our team members threw out his back and announced, "Don't worry team, real innovation starts today." Dead silence. You could hear the ventilation system humming. That silence should have told her something, but Ashley Wellington wasn't built for listening. "This place is running on legacy thinking," she declared, already pulling up a PowerPoint slide she'd probably made in her car. "We need to disrupt the entire paradigm. Think startup mentality. What if efficiency wasn't just a metric, but an experience?" I felt my jaw clench. "Ashley, we make brake components for Ford and GM. They want parts that don't fail at 70 miles per hour, not a spiritual journey." She blinked like I'd spoken Mandarin. "Right, but we can't get trapped in old paradigms, Tom." Old paradigms. It was her favorite phrase, like it gave her permission to ignore 40 years of manufacturing wisdom that kept people alive on highways across America. While she scribbled buzzword nonsense on whiteboards, innovation velocity matrix and quality passion pipeline, I was reviewing metallurgy reports and temperature logs from heat treatment processes. Real work. The kind that matters when someone's life depends on a brake caliper holding up under pressure. Then the Slack messages started. Innocent at first, motivational quotes with rocket ship emojis, random team tags with no context, digital noise from someone who confused activity with productivity. But it got uncomfortable fast. Messages to our female engineers that made my skin crawl. "Jennifer, that presentation was fire. Love the energy you bring in those heels." And, "Sandra, your attention to detail is incredible. We should brainstorm one-on-one soon." I sat in my office, watching these messages pile up like oil stains on concrete, feeling something cold settle in my chest. This wasn't just incompetence anymore. This was a problem that was going to hurt people I'd spent years mentoring and protecting. That's when I started documenting everything. I created a private folder on my drive, labeling it Q4 Process Reviews, boring enough that nobody would look twice. In it, I filed screenshots of the inappropriate Slack messages, audio recordings of meetings where Ashley talked over engineers with decades more experience than her, and timestamped logs of safety protocols she ignored while chasing her innovation fantasies. I wasn't building a complaint file, I was building an insurance policy. 14 years in manufacturing teaches you that when someone expects respect without earning it, they eventually push too far. And when they do, you better have proof of every step they took off the cliff. The breaking point came during a safety briefing about routing changes for our Detroit shipments. Ashley suggested sending 3 trucks through a construction zone during shift change, a move that would have put drivers in danger and delayed delivery by 6 hours. I corrected her politely, professionally, with traffic data to back up my position. That's when Ashley went quiet. Not embarrassed quiet. Predator quiet, like she was deciding whether I was worth the effort to destroy. Later that day, Ashley cornered me by the break room, all fake smiles and Red Bull breath, standing just a little too close for comfort. "Tom," she said, drawing out my name like we were old drinking buddies. "About earlier in the meeting, you kind of undermined me in front of the team. Makes it hard to establish leadership credibility, you know." The coffee in my hand suddenly felt like it weighed 20 pounds. This kid, and that's what she was, a kid with a fancy degree and daddy's connections, was lecturing me about credibility. I corrected a safety violation, I said, keeping my voice level. "Your routing plan would have put drivers in construction traffic during shift change. That's not undermining, that's doing my job." She tilted her head, giving me that patronizing smile rich people use when they are about to explain why you're wrong. "Yeah, but tone matters, Tom. Perception is reality, and leadership. Facts matter more than perception." Her smile flickered. "Just try to meet me halfway next time, okay? We're partners now." Partners, right. Partners, right. Like being partners with a tornado. That night I sat in my kitchen, staring at a cold beer I couldn't bring myself to drink. My mortgage payment was over $1,800 a month. I had 8 years left on it. At 46, starting over somewhere else wasn't just scary, it was damn near impossible. This job wasn't just my career, it was my life. And some spoiled consultant was positioning herself to take it away. I opened my laptop and got to work. That private folder, Q4 process reviews, started growing. This wasn't paranoia, this was survival. I'd learned in the Navy that when someone's gunning for you, you better have ammunition ready when the shooting starts. 2 weeks later, things got worse. Ashley started scheduling her own team meetings, calling them innovation syncs, right over our established safety reviews and quality briefings. She'd stand at the whiteboard, talking about paradigm shifts and disruptive thinking. During one of these performances, she actually said, "What if we reimagined brake components not as safety devices, but as trust interfaces between human and machine?" I almost choked on my coffee. "Ashley, they are brake pads. They stop cars. That's not a philosophical concept." She shot me a look that could have melted steel. "That kind of linear thinking is exactly what's holding us back, Tom." Linear thinking, like basic physics, was some outdated concept she'd evolved beyond. But the real poison started spreading through HR. I noticed it first when Patricia Collins started showing up to our team meetings, scribbling observations. Then came the informal check-ins with my people. Rodriguez found me in the parking lot after his session. "They asked if you ever lose your temper," he said quietly. They didn't seem interested in my answer. That knot in my chest tightened. When HR starts fishing for dirt and doesn't like the answers they are getting, it means they are building a case based on a predetermined conclusion. 3 days later, Sandra Martinez, my best quality engineer, lingered after our weekly one-on-one. "Tom," she said, "they asked me about your communication style with Ashley. Wanted to know if you seemed hostile or dismissive." I knew for certain this was orchestrated. Ashley had decided my refusal to kowtow before her consulting school brilliance was a threat to her authority. I went home that night and updated my resume. But then I remembered something my old chief petty officer used to say. "When they come for you, don't just defend. Counterattack with everything you've got." I opened Hudson's internal policy database instead. 14 years of discipline had taught me that the devil lives in the details. That's how I found Policy Amendment 18.4.2, Age Discrimination Protection Clauses. Policy Amendment 18.4.2 was buried in 47 pages of legal language. But paragraph 12 made me sit up straight. It essentially said, if harassment claims are processed without neutral arbitration and the people reviewing the case have a familial or hierarchical conflict of interest, shared liability extends to the approving HR personnel and related executive leadership. Translation: If HR screws up protecting the boss's family while targeting an older employee, everybody gets dragged down together. Federal liability, SEC disclosure requirements, the kind of exposure that makes corporate lawyers wake up in cold sweats. Patricia Collins and Ashley Wellington had both acknowledged this policy on March 15th. They'd literally signed off on the rule that could destroy them. But here's the beautiful, unbelievable part. I didn't even need to trigger it myself. Ashley had already done the heavy lifting. 3 days earlier, she'd replied to a routine workflow update I'd posted in our engineering channel. What she didn't realize was that she'd attached the wrong file to that emoji. Instead of whatever vapid innovation deck she meant to share, she'd accidentally uploaded HR Performance Review, Tom Morrison Confidential. It sat there in our public Slack channel for 72 hours. 4 to 7 engineers had access to my confidential employee review, complete with Patricia's preliminary notes about resistance patterns in older workforce members and age-related adaptation challenges. Every word was a violation of federal employment law. Miss Digital Native had just committed the most spectacular privacy violation in Hudson's history while trying to modernize our processes. Meanwhile, the HR pressure was building. Patricia scheduled wellness pulse checks, corporate speak for character assassination sessions. One by one, my team got called into Bay's conference rooms for 20-minute interrogations. I ran into Dave Patterson in the men's room. They asked if you ever seemed frustrated with new ideas, he said. They kept pushing. Asked if maybe I just hadn't noticed subtle behaviors. Subtle behaviors. The kind you can't prove or disprove. Perfect for building a case when you don't have actual evidence. That night, I went on the offensive. I logged into Hudson's compliance portal at 3:26 a.m., the digital equivalent of a midnight raid. I uploaded the Slack thread with Ashley's accidental file attachment. I tagged it under Policy Amendment 18.4.2, and I wrote a brief summary. Age discrimination documentation shared publicly without authorization. Executive family conflict of interest present. Shared liability applicable per policy acknowledgement signatures. No emotional language, no accusations, just facts and policy numbers. I hit submit and watched the confirmation appear. Compliance review initiated. Legal notification sent to corporate counsel. Just a quiet digital record that would start moving through channels designed to protect the company from exactly this kind of exposure. At 6:43 a.m., Hudson's corporate counsel got an automated alert that probably ruined his morning coffee. The call came Thursday afternoon. Patricia's assistant asked if I could meet Friday morning to discuss some team dynamics. Of course, I said. Conference room B at 8:15. That's perfect, Mr. Morrison. Thank you for being flexible. Flexible. Right. Like a steel beam is flexible right before it snaps. That night, I got ready for the most important meeting of my career. Friday morning, I walked into conference room B at exactly 8:15, sat down across from Patricia and Ashley, and waited for them to spring their carefully planned trap. They had no idea I'd already triggered the mechanism that would destroy them both. Tom, thanks for coming, Patricia began. This is just an informal conversation about recent team dynamics. I sat down, said nothing, and waited. We've received concerns from a colleague about communication patterns that may be contributing to a hostile work environment. Ashley leaned forward, putting on her best victim performance. Tom, it's not personal, but the way you correct me in meetings feels really aggressive, like you're trying to make me look incompetent in front of everyone. It's been impossible to establish any credibility when I constantly feel diminished. That's when Patricia dropped the hammer. Making a colleague feel inferior based on their background or experience level can constitute workplace harassment under our updated policies. I looked Ashley dead in the eye. You are wasting everyone's time, Ashley. Patricia's face went pale. Tom, that kind of attitude is exactly what we're talking about. But I was already standing up. No dramatic speeches, no angry outbursts. I reached into my jacket and pulled out my security badge, setting it gently on the conference table. If doing my job correctly makes someone feel inferior, I said, then maybe the problem isn't me. Ashley's confident smirk flickered. She looked like someone who'd pulled a grenade pin without thinking about the blast radius. We're not asking for your resignation, Patricia said quickly. This is simply a developmental conversation. I held up my hand. I'm not resigning. I'm removing myself from a situation you've already decided the outcome of. I walked out. By the time I reached my truck, my phone was already buzzing a text from Rodriguez. Legal team just showed up. 3 cars in the parking lot.